everybody. I'm Faith Sidlow, and I am a professor at Fresno State in California. I'm joined here by my colleagues in the Global News Relay. I'm going to introduce my co-moderator, Dan Seed.
Thanks, Faith. My name is Dan Seed. I'm a lecturer at Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas, and I used to work in television news and teach visual storytelling, media management, and television news.
And the rest of our colleagues here who are our panelists today, as we talk about the disruption of news and education, starting with Marion from Ryerson University.
Hi, I'm Marion Kumi. I'm with Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada, and I teach an international media production course where we work with students all around the world, as we do also with the Global News Relay that we're talking about today. And I spent many years with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in television and radio news.
Hi, I'm Jenny Lam. I'm with Hong Kong Baptist University. I'm a lecturer in broadcast journalism and investigative journalism. Before I started teaching, I was in broadcast news myself.
And
I'll go.
April from Breda.
Hi, I'm April de Haas. I am in Breda, the Netherlands. I teach at Breda University of Applied Sciences, but I'm actually Canadian from Toronto and have been here for about a decade. And I teach television production. So I join projects like Global News Relay, Marion's Global Campus Studio, and I also teach documentary producing, international producing. And before teaching, I worked for many years live studio productions for MTV, Nickelodeon, and corporations.
And Sally?
Hello, I'm Sally, and I'm from the University of the West of England in Bristol, UK. I'm a senior lecturer in journalism. I teach mainly media law and ethics at the moment. And in a past life, I worked in television news for Reuters Television, Associated Press Television News, and Sky News.
Kelly?
Hi, I'm Kelly Kaufhold. I work with Dan Seed at Texas State University. I was a journalist in all different platforms, print, mostly in television. I teach multimedia journalism, data journalism, and I teach very much now with smartphones. I taught a course that I created called Storytelling by Smartphone. Using cell phones for video and multimedia production is now a central part of all the courses I teach.
Fred?
Hi, I'm Fred Mudai. I'm course director of MA Global Journalism and Public Relations, and I've been working at Coventry University since 2004. Before joining Coventry University, I did my studies at Nottingham Trent University and Leeds University, but before that, I was working as a journalist with the Standard Media Group in Nairobi, Kenya, and I also had a stint with the Voice of America.
Thanks. Hi, Dev.
Hey, I'm Dave. I'm from Asian College of Journalism in Chennai, and I teach new media, which includes the intersection of technology and storytelling. And what I mean by that, it includes virtual reality, augmented reality, drone journalism, and we are into bots, chatbots. Then we, as part of a module, we work with a lot of universities around the world, and there's wonderful programs. And Faith and I have been working together for a lot of other collaborations, which we hope to include you guys as well in the next iterations. It is called Pop-Up Newsroom. Then good to actually have you around here.
Thanks. Andrew?
Hello, Andrew Lindsay. TV and print background mainly, and a lot of radio too. So I worked for ITV here in the UK for about 8 years, BBC since 2012. I still work for them mainly on World Service and World News TV, but mainly for the University of Salford, whom I'm representing today. So I've been there about 6 years.
Thanks. And right up the road from Kelly and myself is Bruce Geetson at Baylor University. Bruce, how are you?
I'm good. Sorry I just joined in here late, but glad to be a part of this. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm the Director of Student Media here at Baylor. I oversee all the student media and publications, including this growing broadcast group that we had. So this was quite an exercise doing this year, and appreciate y'all's support, and just finished meeting with our executive producer about some of the challenges we faced, and I'm very happy. It was a great learning experience for them.
Thanks, Bruce.
All right. Well, as you know, we have all been having something in common, and that is that in one way or another we've been sheltering in place, or maybe we've been in quarantine or isolation. It's happened at different times around the world. Depending on where you live, you are experiencing it in a different way, but definitely we all have similarities. I'm going to start with Jenny. And Jenny, you, I think, probably out of all of us experienced COVID-19 first with the university, the Hong Kong Baptist University, basically virtually, really literally being shut down as you were trying to organize the Global News Relay, which you did do while sheltering in place. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So yeah, we were initially going to do a Global News Relay back in March, if you remember. We had been, we were kicked off our campus basically last week of January. So it was Chinese New Year. We couldn't go back after Chinese New Year holiday, which was the beginning of February. And I really, at that point, lost confidence in getting everybody together for Global News Relay. But during that time, we went online. And by the way, here in Hong Kong, we were also off our campus for half of the previous semester because of the protests here. So we had already been teaching on Zoom. But this semester, we were able to, I had to come up with ways to teach an advanced broadcast class, how to do a newscast without the studio, how to get everybody to pitch. And the main thing with Global News Relay and my classes were the students were unable to go out and film footage for their stories. So I basically, had to say to them, just find whatever you can online. The purpose of your learning is to use footage to tell stories. Too bad if you can't actually go and film them. Are you going to share the video?
Yes, actually, right this moment, I am trying to get that audio to work as I share it. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play it, and you can talk about it, okay? Because the audio is not going to work. So stand by just one moment, and we will do that.
So what Faith hopefully will bring up was it was actually a news anchoring class in which the students were supposed to learn how to use a chroma key to present a local election. So we couldn't do any of that. The university didn't want us to put the students in harm's way. So we set up this chroma key, and this was just using Google Earth Studio and Prezi, a combination of the two. So this, what you're looking at right now, he made a Prezi, and then he stuck it onto a chroma key, and a combination of also Adobe After Effects. And this was the chroma key set up in my daughter's room, and there they are. Well, it wasn't the best of chroma key, obviously because of the lack of depth in the room, but we didn't have another room. This was the students doing a newscast on Zoom. This was the beginning. So the footage is all filmed with cameras, and then we just got better and we just became more confident. So we started making a trailer, and this was one of my students later in the semester. So we have a 13-week semester. We just learned more and more and became more and more confident during the stuff. Yeah. So.
And I'll jump in here. So in terms of your end, Jenny, once you got past the initial shutdown and then, modifying how you go about doing this, what challenges did you all face coordinating the Global News Relay and dealing with just everybody kind of getting hit by this as it unfolded throughout the spring?
I think that the communication, and that's everybody when we were having a good time. I just needed to put that in. I think the communication got a little bit confusing. So here in Asia, we use WhatsApp a lot. So me and my students prefer to use that. And then we found that, other people don't use that, or they're unfamiliar with how this platform works. Some people prefer email. And so that part was a little bit tricky. But, we got it together.
Yeah.
The Zoom was using the Zoom was a learning curve for everybody as well. At one point, I had to call my IT people at the university and say, hey, how do I stream it to Facebook? And they were like, I don't know. We have never done it either. So we figured it out. And then we had a lot of fun with the virtual set. Some of my students had Hogwarts as a virtual set. I don't know if you've seen the movie Parasite. I had that. This is real. This is real. And I think, I think I also teach an investigative journalism class. That class was much easier than the broadcast class because that mainly involved a lot of search tools on the computer. So it was just a case of sharing my screen with them. But with broadcasting, it was tricky. And I think that I felt bad that the students, they came to our university looking forward to that experience of using the studio. And they didn't get it, really. I mean, how does everybody feel about that?
Yeah, I was gonna say let's open that up because Jenny's challenges that she mentioned, I think, are ones that we all share. So who wants to jump in and discuss some of the production challenges that you all had in completing the Global News Relay?
Can I just jump in very briefly? In the case of Coventry University, we had fortunately advised the students to do their stories sooner rather than later. As soon as we started hearing of reports of COVID-19 virus in China, we heard about the change of the submission dates and the transmission date. We said, we are not going to wait until close to the deadline. So can we get this done and dusted? We had initially scheduled our studio recording on the 2nd of March, and we said we are going to go ahead with that. And we did go ahead with that, and we had our recording in the studio on the 2nd of March. So, but we had some issues with the, we needed to check some consent issues as well as do some fine tuning. So we were in a bit of a better position. But still our students were rather confused because of the constant changes. But as far as the actual packaging of GNR, we were in a better position.
And let me just bounce to Sally, then I'll get to Marion and Kelly. Sally, you finished early as well, but encountered a completely different issue, one that probably most of us have never really thought of.
Yes, for once we were early and we had it beautifully cut together. We went ahead and shot all the studio links and the edit was virtually finished, and then we shut down so quickly that we didn't get it off the server, and then it was locked in. So we had to kind of reconstruct the whole piece. Luckily, people had their packages saved elsewhere, so we could bring those together. And then we reshot the links, as you'll see when the GNR goes out in somebody's bedroom, having updated the script and then put in some of our new lockdown pieces. So it was a really fantastic effort by the students to kind of think creatively about how we can reconstruct this in the best way possible. And I think it looks good in the end, but that was something we had never thought of, and it also is a lesson. It always back up.
Yeah, certainly. Definitely a good practice going forward, one that we at Texas State definitely hadn't thought of. Marion?
We were halfway through our semester when the shutdown came. So the Global News Relay stories, they had done a first cut. And in the real world, I would have told them all the things that were wrong with them and made them go out and do more shooting. But then we were stuck at home. So they they are not of the quality that I would have expected or they would have expected. So they had to go online and find, so some of the stories about recycling, and then are the images they're finding online copyright protected? Are they allowed to use them or not use them? That was kind of going on with it as well. And some of the interviews they did had audio problems in them, but they couldn't go back and reshoot them. In 2020 hindsight, I wished that I'd said to them, contact the person you interviewed and interview them on Zoom and use that instead, which I didn't.
In April, earlier when we were discussing just kind of the confusion of the situation and the confusion of students, you were nodding pretty vehemently there. Can you talk about that?
I think part of the reason why I'm so much in agreement is because we had actually been working on 3 of these different initiatives. Global News Relay, there was another one called Earth Day, Global Earth Day Live, and based out of Leeds, and Marion's Global Studio Network. So I had 20 students all working on different projects, and they were just falling apart one at a time. And I was scrambling, of course, to come up with new projects, and indeed, like everyone else, they had things half shot. So there was a lot of confusion with students, which is why it's so satisfying to sit here now when actually 2 of the 3 projects came to fruition, and indeed they weren't of the same quality, but we still delivered a show in these times, which is absolutely amazing.
And it's a great learning experience, right? That everybody's having to do this professionally, and now students are being forced to do that in that same real world environment. Let's shift a little bit here, because part of the discussion is about this idea of online education, and we're all in that same boat of moving online. We've all had these, these stories about challenges and moving online. Let's discuss this disruption in education and give some of your initial challenges that you faced about going online with these production heavy classes, and then how you all readjusted throughout the semester to have some takeaways going forward. And I'll open this up to anybody that just wants to jump in here. Kelly?
Oh, Marion can go first. I don't mind.
I was just going to say, one of the sort of humorous but strange things I think happened for a lot of us is students who were not willing to turn their cameras on when they came to class, mostly because they're in their pajamas in bed. And how you don't know if your students are there or not there, listening or not listening. And I told them all in advance, do your hair, put your clothes on. I want to see you. I want your participation, and it's not. So that was certainly an interesting challenge, that how do you get them engaged when you don't know if their camera's not on?
Mm-hmm. Kelly?
Marion, we taught our classes in our pajamas, so I don't see what the It was validating for the students to see professionals using Zoom and quarantined at home. And some of my former students are now news anchors, news reporters, and they shared their perspective. I got lucky in a sense. We met with our students about GNR right before spring break. Then they went on spring break, 2nd week in March. Then that got extended to 2 weeks. And then, of course, we shut down in that 2nd week, so never came back. But I think Deb does a lot of the same thing I do. I had spent the first 6 or 7 weeks of my course teaching my students in a video production class. Dan does some similar things, how to do all of these projects on their cell phones, and Tyler on their cell phones, including editing and publishing finished videos. We went on spring break, they never came back. They didn't have access to cameras. I got lucky because my students, just because of what I'd managed to show them before, were tuned up to finish the semester entirely on their phones. So we've gotten some pretty remarkable projects that way. Shockingly, I think that's going to be a big part of the future of video production.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and one I want to get into. Fred did raise his hand though, so Fred, I want to give you an opportunity to jump in here.
Okay. I would just like to say that in our case at Coventry University, it happens that the university has had policies in relation to use of online teaching and online learning. So that made it a bit easier for us when we transitioned into online learning, because straight away we were using Microsoft Office, and we were able to have editorial meetings to discuss the footage and other aspects, because we were also working on another project, magazine project. So The challenge we faced was that not all students were turning up. Probably just slightly over 50% of the students were turning up. We faced the same issue of some students not turning their cameras on. But for us, it wasn't that necessary. The most useful aspect of this was when I sat down for a Teams meeting, about 3 hours of Teams meeting in one day, broken into 2 Teams meetings, where I was with the student editor and the our technician, and we did some of the final editing on Teams. He was able to share some of the the footage and the audio, and somehow that worked for us. Can I just add that regarding what Sally said earlier about footage, again, we tend to use Moodle customed for our university, and the university came up with a policy of saving everything on Office 365, which has about 1 terabyte storage for every user. So all our footage and packages were stored on Office 365, which means as soon as the university closed without a notice, and all of us were able to access our Office 365 storage space, and we used that for teaching and sharing students' resources as well.
I see in our chat here that April and Sally both chimed in that you had better attendance or stronger attendance during online. What in terms of engagement, how did you engage students to maybe draw them out of the woodwork to get them to come into class online?
I think sometimes it's easier. You don't have to get on a bus. You can just roll out of bed and be in class, which is good. Also, I think a lot of students interact in those ways anyway. We use Collaborate for quite a lot of teaching here. I don't know if other people have used it, where, again, I was giving lectures in which they could see and hear me, but I can't see or hear them during the lecture, but they can add comments. And so they were sort of asking questions about the lecture as we were going through. And then at the end, we can then answer, it sort of captures all the engagement that they're thinking of. Normally in a lecture, they wouldn't be able to sort of ask a question right in the middle, but they can using this online tool. So it actually was a kind of more engaging experience for them, I think. And for news days, we've been doing a lot of, they've been running entirely virtually, and a lot of, for some reason, we've had 100% attendance and engagement on some of those days, which we wouldn't have necessarily in normal times. It's an interesting bit of research going forward, I think, to see what is it about this kind of teaching that actually works better for some students.
And I don't know if you found, I was having a lot of one-to-one Zoom meetings with students. We would have our classes, and I found there are a lot of the quieter students that I got to know a lot better, because from my living room to their living room, and they're not having to compete with any of the other students to talk. And then we would share the Google Drive. If they were working on a script, we would work on the script together. So I found that very helpful.
I have that same experience. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, April.
Just quickly, that the only thing about those one-on-one meetings and all of this collaboration, and it was just a complete frenzy at the beginning. And while attendance is better and we are able to teach a lot of what we do, the workload with those one-on-one meetings has me personally destroyed at the end of the day, because my hours are doubled at least. And I think the same goes for students because they have that kind of access. At the same token, it's still really satisfying because you are reaching those quieter students, and you're delivering better, more concise advice.
Bruce?
Thanks, Kelly. We were in the same boat that you were, Kelly, here in Waco, and that the spring break got extended a week, and then they said, no, we're not going to allow students back on campus. And the students were kind of trying to figure out how we're going to do our classes, and the professors were trying to figure out how to teach online because that wasn't the normal mode here. And so there was a week there after spring break. We stopped doing our weekly newscasts that we tape on Friday mornings, but we still told students, you still got to produce content and populate our website, digital, with both print and broadcast. And so it took them about a week to get into that mode where they're saying, hey, we've got to do this. and they started producing some stories, but I had about 50% participation because some of them weren't quite sure. They liked the face-to-face interaction with people with stories, and they were having a hard time adapting to that. And then we got a project kind of dumped on our plate early in April, and they gave us a week to produce some student election debates for student body president and internal and external vice presidents. And they came to our students and said, we'd like you guys to do that, student government. And our students, well, that'll be fun. I said, well, wait a minute, let's plan this out. And in the back of our mind, the Global News Network was always lurking, and they hadn't made a decision on that. So in a week, they produced, and it was all done via Zoom. It was virtual, these student body debates. And then we had our weekly meeting right after that. And I said, hey, good job on that, guys. We've got to make a decision on Global News Relay. And this was around the middle of April. And surprisingly, I thought they were going to say, well, it's too much work. We're too tired. You guys had opened it up to COVID to do those stories too. And they were more excited about that than the Earth Day. And they unanimously, I say unanimously, there's 9 students in my broadcast lab, but they said, yeah, we want to do GNR. I said, okay. We started going through the stories and the rundowns and how are you going to do it? And then we put it on our managing editor and executive producer. How are you going to piece that together with split screens and Premiere and all that? We weren't able to use a studio that we normally had. And so that was a real challenge for them as well. But I think one of the positives out of this is it opened eyes to the students that now you've got a new incremental interview stream or video stream. You've got people on this campus, sometimes we call, can we do interviews? And they'd get the deer in the headlights about having a TV camera in front of them. They're a lot more comfortable talking to a computer now because they're so used to doing so much Zoom or WebEx or Teams or whatever it is, that now I think it will be easier for students in the future to get these type of interviews, and it'll be more accepted by journalists to say, hey, this is how we got the video and how we talk to them, because you see the networks doing it all the time. So I think long-term, it's going to be a big positive.
We had a similar experience. In fact, some of our shy students who got deer in the headlights also preferred doing interviews. So I ended up doing some tutorials that I never intended to do starting in late March, which was, here's how you can host a Zoom meeting. I sent tutorials with videos, showed them how to be a host, how to record, certain tips in there. Then one of the problems we had was you couldn't shoot B-roll, right? So I teased early in the semester, there are different kinds of shots. One is the reversal or cutaway. You don't get paid enough for those shots. But then I said, guess what? You've been promoted. Now that you can't go out and shoot B-roll, you do make enough for cutaways. And here's how you use your cell phone to shoot a cutaway of you doing an interview with Zoom so that you can edit around jump cuts. I showed them tools in Premiere that I never thought I'd have to show, like transitional tools. And then a great thing about Zoom for one-on-one meetings, and Marion alluded to this, the one-on-ones, and so did April. But I was able to have students share their screen, and it was just like I was looking over their shoulder with technology. They had a problem with Adobe Audition, Adobe Premiere. Here's how you fix that. Show me your screen, and I'm going to talk you step by step through how to do it. So Zoom was actually a terrific tool in that sense. That was very much like a live lab.
So Kelly, so Jenny.
Yeah, so one of the problems that we're actually still having is our senior students. They have to complete a graduation project. I think that the problem with doing everything online is 2 things. It depends a lot on the capacity of your computer, and secondly, the how well the student can handle technology, and that there's a discrepancy. There's a difference. I have students who beg to go back to the campus to use the Premiere because their own computer cannot handle all that video footage. Another very big problem we have here in Hong Kong is that we have some students who are in mainland China, and they don't have they can use Zoom, but they cannot use Google. So we couldn't share a lot of the stuff that we have on our G Drive with them. When we ask them to do certain things in the internet, they have to use a VPN, which, by the way, is illegal and can get them into trouble. So that inequality was something that we had to bear in mind.
That's something that we had.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, Dev.
Yeah, actually, this has been the lockdown started a little late here in India. This has been quite an eye opener for a lot of us, particularly for me, in the sense that I do a lot of high-end technical thing. For example, I never thought I'd be able to teach interactive virtual reality and augmented reality, or gamification, then chatbot. And these are very highly technical things. I never thought I'd be able to actually deal with the students on Zoom, trying to teach them this. The learning curve is except drones. You can practically teach anything on Zoom. So what we used was a combination. Now we started with BlueJeans. Then we were not comfortable with BlueJeans. Then we used a combination of Zoom for face-to-face meetings, for just live meetings. Then along with that, we used a web platform called EC Class. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Google Classroom. This is pretty much like Google Classroom. Google Classroom is, of course, I would highly recommend Google Classroom or a EC Class along with Zoom. So you can keep assignment, and people who are not comfortable with cameras, and a lot of people are not comfortable with cameras, they can actually get on with the one-on-one interaction, have one-on-one interaction with the professor by way of text, which other people don't get to see. Then somebody else mentioned, I found the attendance under 100% for a change when they are home. And another experience I would like to share with this. I found people who are usually very, very, just introvert type, and the creativity that, when they are in their own space, when they are in their comfort zone. And a lot of them were very, very much more creative than in the classroom. So that is one of the eye opener for me. Then I can show you, can I share my screen? Something we did.
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
Share my screen?
Yes.
So, yeah, for example, so we do something like, say, interactive VR news reporting, our newscaster is in 360. So something like this, I never thought I'd be able to do this.
Hold.
Okay.
Dev, hold on 1 second.
For example, something like this.
Only April and Dan can share their screen.
Yeah, I need to get this set here. My apologies.
No worries. So we send out people for reporting, and when they come back with the reports, and this is one of the things we actually use with the footage, leftover footage of what we had into a 360. Can you see my screen?
No, right now we can't. I'm trying to get it set.
You can see that. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Let me see if I can do it again. It says right now, let's see, try one more time, Devin, see if you can do it. It says that you should be able to. You may have to double click.
Okay. Do you want me to come back? Okay, already. Yeah.
Try one more time.
Can I do it again?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Things are a little bit different when you are actually taking it live than when you practice. So we have the, there we go.
There we go.
Got it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So here we have, say this interactive experience. This is how we do newscaster. So when you have, say, different people can experience this differently. So the user is in control, and the user can actually, this looks a little odd. When the user reads it and watches it, and this is actually the interactive. You create in 360 create interactive hotspots where this will express it to you. By gazing at it, you don't click on it. You gaze on the and it takes you to another 360. So 360, and we have 3 reporters lined up inside that 360. You can see that. Okay, reporter and that reporter starts reporting. And here the user is in control. You can go back to the expressive menu again by looking at that button, or the user can go back to the home screen.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. One thing that has been brought up here as Dev was talking, which that was really interesting to see, in the use of VR and how you're able to use that during this time, is this discussion, and I think this goes back to equity that Jenny brought up with students, that we just assume you've got the internet, we just assume you've got a good computer, we just assume that you're going to be able to run programs like Avid or Adobe Premiere. Going forward, what would you like to see happen maybe at your universities, or not to get too specific, but going forward maybe in general, to help students or your programs shore up in case something like this happens again, so that students have access to computers that are able to run programs like Premiere away from the university?
Yeah, that's a hard one because when they're at school, they use the Mac, like a big Mac. Obviously, many of them cannot afford that at home. How to make it more equal? Well, I mean, here in Hong Kong, I know some of the very wealthy private schools, I'm talking about high schools, they started giving the students or lending them computers, but I'm not sure if universities can do that.
That was going to be my suggestion, to allow students to borrow equipment to bring it home.
Because another issue that comes up is the students all have their mobile phones, but in their home, when they're back living with their parents, there may be one laptop at home. Well, mom and dad may both be working from home. Younger brother and sister may both be having to do online learning from home. And then we're all saying to them, this is your class time and you have to be there. So I was having a lot of students using their mobile phones to attend their classes, and then the quality wasn't necessarily as good. So, those were issues that everyone was having to deal with in Canada, and I'm sure where you are as well.
And
It's
Fred,
also-
I saw you raised your hand.
Yes, I mean, again, fortunately, for Coventry University, for our undergraduate students, they are provided with state-of-the-art Mac laptop, which is preloaded with Adobe Creative Suite and other software when they join in the first year, which they have co-own with the university for the 3 years of their study, and then it gets transferred to them at the end of their 3 years with no additional fee. So it is one of the facilities that the universities provide. So different departments offer different facilities, but in the case of the School of Media and Performing Arts, which is where journalism and media production and other similar courses are based, it is the laptop, Apple Mac laptop that is offered. In the case of postgraduate students, similar offer is not made, but they are, if students come with their own personal laptop, the university provides Adobe Creative Suite. We only, and I teach postgraduate level, the master's degree. All students, all of our students didn't have an issue with editing using Premiere Pro, but except one. So, that's the kind of provision that we provide.
Very good. And then Kelly, you had your hand up.
Brad, on that same topic, it's a great point, which we just encountered. So our department for summer, our summer classes start 1st of June, we recognized that was a problem just in the last few weeks. It emerged as a problem again that we hadn't thought of, because they had access to state-of-the-art computer labs on campus. Now they don't. And so all of a sudden they're running into the same problem at home. So we have arranged for students to have access to Creative Cloud software, but also we're getting dozens of new MacBook Pros, MacBook Airs, that students will be able to check out on an as-needed basis starting in summer 1. That's a brand new offering from our university because of this problem that we hadn't anticipated. So you were ahead of the curve. That was smart.
And I know that we've talked about a lot of the resources that we have for students at universities that have resources, but what about those universities that don't have resources?
I was mentioning in the project that I work on called the Global Campus Studio Live, one of our partners is Johannesburg in South Africa. Many of the students from there, when the university shut down, they live in more rural areas. They don't have laptops at home and there's no Wi-Fi. The data costs are really high. So the show that we did with them, they landed up having to sort of put it together on their own in bits and pieces, and they were just sort of assembling it. However, any student was able to assemble their part and then put them together. So we weren't able to do it live or even live to tape because their students simply didn't have access to Wi-Fi and they didn't have access to computers.
And also, I think, April, you mentioned something about Adobe Creative
Free
Suite.
to all students, but
Oh,
then
yeah,
again,
it's
it's
very
very
early
early into the crisis.
a
We got
laptop
word that they were making it
that.
completely free.
And I
to
just
all
wanted to,
students,
on the
but
back
then
of Mary
again, it's
Lou,
do they
say
have
that,
a
I now have
laptop
students
that
coming
can
to me
handle
because
that?
we've wrapped our
And I just wanted
semester
to, on the back of Mary, quickly say
we
that
are now entering new
I now
semester.
have
They're actually
students
coming and pitching
because
me
we
what we should do
wrapped
in the
our
next
semester
semester with lack of equipment
and lack of
we are now
laptops,
entering
and
new
I've
semester.
received
They're
3 or
actually
4
coming and
different
pitching me
ideas.
what we should do
So I was
in
actually,
the
we
next
were going to be
semester with
launching
lack
a
of
new
equipment
show, and
and
I've
lack of
approached some of you
laptops.
to
I've received
help
3 or
take
4
part
different
in that.
ideas. So I was actually, we were going to be
just
launching
kind of
a
like
news
a
show, and I've approached
Breda Today
type
type
news show.
take part in that.
So they're coming and pitching
but
me
just
how they
kind
can
of
use
like
the
a
technology. So
a
they're
Breda
already
Today
today
type
type
news
news
show.
show how they can do it.
So
They're coming and pitching me how they can use the
Something that I've
technology.
noticed
So they're
about
already
the students,
innovating
and this
and
is,
thinking how
I'm
they can do
sure,
it.
in addition
So
to
they're making my job
is that
easier.
something that I've noticed about the students, and they really haven't wanted to give up. I do have a video that I wanted to show you that is just a very brief little video. I do have some of the things that they did to show you that, and I'm going to see if I can make this very brief little video of what some of the things that they did start out with, and I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit of.
I'm Nadia Gonzalez.
And I'm Hector Mendoza. We're in a sort of Super Tuesday hangover.
Even though the numbers speak to a win for Dyer, he's not yet made a formal announcement.
Tomorrow, we're gonna be at a high 82, and then that's gonna be our hottest temperature this week.
Live from the Save Mart Center, Zion Goodman, Fresno State Focus.
Here we go again. There we go. There's 3.
Where's Melissa?
I'm working on it.
Sorry.
I don't know if I can do 4.
You can move me out of there.
Yeah.
Wow, go team.
Something I learned, I feel like we all learned from COVID is that use all the resources available, whether it's YouTube, whether it's social media, or anything out there. You just gotta ask, and you just gotta tell yourself, oh, maybe I could use this for my story. This has made me a bigger person, so I've learned a lot. I told myself to make a schedule to continue learning, because only because this season is going on, that doesn't mean that I have to stop learning.
We ended up doing 9 newscasts in total. 3 of them were in the studio, 6 were in their bedrooms, and basically they just learned how to make things work. I don't know if you did hear what Gio was saying. He learned how to be resourceful, and that's not something our students typically learn during a normal school year.
Yeah, I agree. I think everyone learned so much how to adapt, and then because they were also seeing in the professional news, them all adapting in the same way and seeing how everyone out there in the regular broadcast world was doing it. And, also some of the things that they are so good at with TikTok and Instagram, I found my students adapted very quickly to saying, oh, I can take my mobile phone out and I can do a selfie video and, do stand-up reports in live locations. They went out on the streets and got all kinds of shots of empty streets and closed businesses and closed restaurants. And so, yeah, those skills they really adapted to. And also then, for my students who don't watch television, it was a way for them to also learn how accessible news is on the good old-fashioned television that their parents watch, and now they're using their modern skills and they're watching. This is video of when we're in our studio. So this is the Global Campus Studio. And you can see this is one we did with Fresno and Brazil and London and Scotland and some of the other countries that we work with. So we're normally in our studio with using Skype for broadcast. This is our Studio B control room. And then I don't know if the screen grab is there. And there we were doing Global Campus Studio live. The show is called The New Normal. These are Faith's two hosts at the bottom there. So this was one show we did with just Toronto, and there are the students from Jenny's Hong Kong students, and we had Tel Aviv in Russia, and so all over the world. And it was, in many ways, it was more seamless. I don't know, April and Jenny and Faith, who are all part of it, if you agree. It was relatively seamless, and but we didn't do it live. So we made the decision, as opposed to going live, we recorded it, and I had a student editor, and after the shows were over, he edited in the lower thirds, and he edited in all kinds of graphics and B-roll, and then it took a long time to export because he's using his home laptop. But within about 4 or 5 days of shooting the shows, we turned them all around and set them out on Facebook and YouTube. It was a great experience.
Yes. I was going to say that too. It used to be so important to us to have everything live, and then once COVID hit, post-production was our friend. Everything was done in post. We really did not find a adequate streaming service or adequate platform to actually produce the show live. And I know Marion, my engineers, Terry Dolph and Eli, they worked with your engineers at Ryerson University to try to figure out one platform that we could use to make it all happen, and we just haven't been able to do that yet.
We worked on something called Studio 10, which is a virtual control room. But the problem, even when we did a test case with several locations within Toronto, the audio and video quality was not as good as Zoom. And it allowed you to do a lot more things that you could do in a real control room. But we made the decision to go with Zoom because he couldn't get the quality control he needed on that particular platform.
Yeah, I would suggest BeLive. We've been doing this from different countries, say 8 to 12 countries for the last 5 years using a technology called BeLive TV. And you can bring in the lower third and the entire PCR, and Faith has been part of this for the last 2-3 years. And we have this like pop-up newsroom. We just like this global newsroom, we just go live. So we do that three times in a year, and the last one was International Women's Day on March 8th, and we went live with women's activists from 17 different countries, including Afghanistan. People's like in Afghanistan, and we talk about internet connectivity, but we managed to pull it off. Another thing I would like to bring about is like I texted in the chat. What we find in India is the mobile technology is a great leveler. You don't need to have a fancy Mac to be able to produce a broadcast quality product. For example, like I said, the chroma key thing can easily be done like this on KineMaster, and it can be taught on Zoom. And you can have what I say the quality people talk about when you're talking about mobile technology, talk about the broadcast quality. So, for example, the last time I touched a broadcast camera was 18 years ago. So, if you give that camera to me, it will be horrible. So don't blame the camera for that, blame me for that. So if somebody is not able to produce a broadcast quality product with the phone, that person doesn't know how to use it. That's my point. Okay? Like giving me a broadcast camera and asking and expecting a high quality broadcast quality product, which I'm not comfortable doing that.
Deb, we have a couple.
So I think mobile technology is a level the playing field.
Dave, we have a couple of questions for you. Kelly has asked if please share the name of the online tool that you use, and also the name of the app that you use for going live.
Yeah, going live, BeLive TV, BeLive.tv, which you get a 14-day free version. So Faith, you're more familiar with, because we've done it for 4 or 5, and you can actually bring in pre-packaged live as well as pre-packaged product, pre-packaged bits into that. So if you watch, I can share the link with you sometime later. That is, and if you watch, we went blind for 9 universities, and Coventry was part of it. Priya was my colleague, by the way, Fred. And Coventry was part of it. And what we did was, you can actually, we used Google Earth to actually take the audience from one university to another. And also, after ECG is done, our college is done, we shifted the studio to Coventry seamlessly. And the whole prediction was done from Chennai. And from Coventry, it was shifted to Germany. And from there to Fresno. And I still remember it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and Fresno students were up and were doing something. It was live reporting in real time and 3-hour show.
And it was 3 o'clock in the morning.
Seamless integration. Yeah, seamless with no heavy investment. And you can just look it up, pop-up newsroom. And that is BeLive TV, okay, which can be produced, with a laptop, and you can have go with it, you can have break. And the most important thing about it is the real-time interactive feature. That is, if somebody is watching in Mexico City, and and if that person, she has a question, the audience, real-time interaction with the audience. If that person has a question, they can actually type the question on the Facebook comment and type the question, and we get to see that. The producer gets to see that, and producer can pin that question onto the screen and ask the reporter or the guests.
Excellent.
Okay, and this is amazing, that technology. I don't know why this is not being used. I think only we've been using this. Let's just try that out. BeLive. Coventry has been part of it. Fresno has been part of it. Hong Kong, I don't know whether Hong Kong has been part of it. And that is one level up. Okay, this is a free technology. You don't need a satellite, OB-WAN, you don't need any satellite connectivity, and it's in real time. That reporting, that changes everything. The real-time nature and the real-time interaction with the audience, the engagement with the audience. And that's what I find very interesting. And the other technology for editing, there's KineMaster is amazing.
Say that
for
again.
Android and KineMaster. KineMaster. It's a German thing, K-I-N-E. I'll put in the chat.
Okay, all
KineMaster.
right. Excellent.
And that's what I used to teach chroma keys. You can easily, just in a few seconds, you can change the chroma key with KineMaster. Then for LumaFusion, that's what we use in ACJ, for editing. So that because it's very difficult to get Mac for students, and we have got only very few Macs. But we encourage people to just go out and be on the phone, just because this, like we are using, and I'm not using a laptop here. I'm participating in this on my iPad. I don't use a laptop anymore. So this is more comfortable for me. It's actually when you're traveling also, you can actually use this. So like I said, except drone, you can do pretty much everything with the Zoom and the combination of Zoom plus Google Classroom or EC Class.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what we've been talking about, as for those of you who are joining us, by the way, we are streaming live on YouTube, and also it's been connected to Facebook. We did have, just so our panelists all know, we did have a bad a bad YouTube link up there originally. So if you are trying to watch this, or have your colleagues or students watch this, you may want to take a moment to send out the correct link, which I think I have put in the chat there for you, so you can send that out. Also, we've been talking about disruption in the industry. We've talked about technology. We've talked about the types of stories that our students have done. We also needed to talk a little bit about the evolution of the journalist. So we are people now sitting in our bedrooms and in our living rooms, or some of my students are doing their stories from inside their cars because they have too many children in their families and don't have any private space to work in. But what about the evolution of the journalist? Were people now showing our emotions? Is that good or is that bad? Kelly.
Well, I think that's good. I think there's something authentic about it. And a lot of again, I've had former students who do this as anchors. They've set up a whole studio at home, but then they'll show you the studio. A really robust part of actual professional reporting, and GNR has kind of embraced this for a few years. We've done it for years in our class, but social media. So you get that look behind the scenes at sort of the home studio. But the other thing is some difficulty doing live shots. We still do live coverage via social media. So my students now use Facebook to do Facebook Live, or Instagram videos, or they'll share videos on Twitter. And that's a very important part of it. Is you'll do live coverage, you'll put us at the scene on social media. Maybe later it's appropriate then to take that video from your social media or your phone and incorporate it in your story. But if it's not, that's your live presence. And that's another really important change. And a number, again, of my former students who are now employees in newsrooms have said that using phones and social media has become a much more robust part of their reporting.
Absolutely. And Jenny, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think the part that's really missing is I personally believe that a huge part of education is for these young people to learn how to work with people in the real world. Yes, obviously many of them are technically very capable, but is working in a real people environment when they leave university, that's what we need to offer them.
Absolutely. And I know that there are a few people who we have not been able to hear from much. Bruce, it looks like you have something to say.
And yeah, I think one of the interesting things after GNR was talking to the students about how they came up with how they improvised to shoot their stories. They're using Amazon boxes to make a tripod, or getting their mom to help them with lighting, and then the mom was saying, quiet on the set, those kind of things. And that's a big part once they get into the professional environment of having to improvise and make do with what they have. And I think that's one of the valuable lessons from this GNR, from this whole COVID situation, is they got to figure out ways that they maybe not have thought of before to do it. And then also that, like you talked about, Jenny, is more accepted now than it used to be. It used to be real journalists or commercial network journalists would scoff at doing a phone interview or something like that. Well, now it's more accepted to do because of the restraints we've had on this. And I think that was fascinating, talking to my students about how they made things work without a lot of equipment for it. So.
Okay, yeah, I agree with Andrew.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with that. And I think it's been a bit of a leveler for them, because the issue we've had for years is that, we started off in journalism, most of us who were lecturing it, in a completely different world where there's no virtual interaction at all. And so getting hold of people in person, knocking on doors was all part of our lives. They're really uncomfortable with that in the main, the younger students, mine anyway, I've found for years. And so this has been a kind of halfway house of asking people and experts who suddenly have actual time to speak to my students. They can do video calls with them, and it seems to be a leveler. I just think that you asked at the beginning about emotion. I don't know if you asked about journalists showing emotion, and that's the only thing I'm worried about. There's a little bit of a danger of journalists becoming the story a little bit. There's a kind of look at meism that seems to be reasonably prevalent because there's all this airtime to fill and no pictures. So that's the bit that concerns me.
Yeah, and of course there's that difference then between journalism and opinion, which I think, at least in the United States, we have a difficult time telling the difference between the two. And that brings us to media literacy too, and verification. When we have, especially our students who don't have as much experience deciding what the news source is that they're using and whether it's real news or that other word, fake news, how do we make sure that our students are learning how to properly verify the information that they're getting? Who wants to take? Jenny.
So I teach an investigative journalism class, and I actually spend 2 of those classes just on fact checking and verification. And it's all kinds of tools. But the really frustrating part is as soon as somebody comes up with a verification tool, then the people making the fakes will come up with something to override it. So I think this is a constant battle for journalists.
Yes.
Which I think is very frustrating. I mean, I'm sure that all of you remember a time when the work of the journalist was to go to find the stories rather than deciphering the truth from the fakes. Right?
And now they are deciding what the stories are. They're deciphering truth from fake. And they're also trying to be on first with their Facebook Lives or their social media. Dan, what did you have to say about that?
Yeah, it's just interesting, this idea of fakes and deep fakes and believing what you see. There's a documentary airing currently on ESPN here on Michael Jordan and his Chicago Bulls final team. And there's an ad that plays during one of the commercial breaks where it's 2 SportsCenter anchors it's a real SportsCenter shot from the 1990s, so you feel like it's a part of the documentary. And then they've deep faked the anchor to where now he's talking about, you know, and in 30 years they're going to make a documentary about this Chicago Bulls team, and you're going to watch it, and you're going to do this, and and it's actually an advertisement, which really felt dirty when I watched it, because I'm watching the documentary, I'm thinking, oh great, an old SportsCenter clip, and then all of a sudden it's an advertisement where they've manipulated the anchors' mouths and voices to feel like it's part of the show. And to me, that's incredibly frightening when you see that from a network, right, like ESPN, allowing that to happen during a show, to where they're creating this seamless transition between an advertisement and the show, and there's no disclaimer, you know, no commercial break or any black screen. It just goes right to it. You feel like you're watching the documentary, and that's really dangerous for you know, students, I think, and for people that are non-media literate, to see that they're not able to really differentiate, you know, what they're seeing. And the fact that a network would do that is kind of, that makes me a little nervous.
Dan, how do you feel about Michael Jordan having censorship rights on that program?
That's a whole nother discussion, right? Is that they're creating this content, and Michael Jordan, his production company is heavily involved, and yeah, it makes you wonder what story we're getting, and we've seen some blowback from that just based off the last few episodes, where some of the people that he's called out have come back and said, well, that's not exactly the whole story. So yeah, that's a different time altogether. But yeah, no, that's another really good discussion to have.
I want to hold up for just a second here, because we are actually getting quite a few questions from people who are viewing us on YouTube right now. One is coming from Garima at Asian College of Journalism, who asks, do you think there will be enough job opportunities in the journalism fraternity or industry right after the pandemic ends? Who wants to take that one? We're all shaking our heads like we don't want to touch that one, but I think it's important that we address it. Deb, if you were trying to talk, we need to unmute.
And in some ways, I feel like there are more opportunities because there are more platforms. And so there may not be the sort of opportunities to be the reporter at the the bricks and mortar TV station that there used to be. But I think our students are discovering all kinds of other ways to get their voices out there. Now, whether they can make money using those other ways of getting their voices out there is another question. But I think a lot of my students are feeling very positive about their ability to market themselves as an information producing product.
Sally, what are your thoughts?
I was just thinking that, you know, some of us, I think we're quite hopeful as well in a way, because some of our students have already started little startups since we've been locking down, especially the third years are about to finish, and they're a bit kind of, well, the placements have disappeared, but what they're doing now is setting up their own places to produce work. Again, whether they can make a living out of it is another matter. But I also think that they are storytellers, what we produce, and so there are lots and lots of jobs out there for people who can make this kind of content. Especially as we're going online, I think we'll need more content because we'll be doing more stuff online, and our students are kind of quite nicely placed to be able to produce that. Their skills in editing and storytelling and producing nice content, I think, might be at a premium.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, and in several different industries. Fred.
Thank you. I think what I would like to add to what has already been said is the fact that when we with this kind of question, we tend to also bring in industry players and those who come to speak to our students at Coventry University. What they've tended to say is that they want people who have new skills. We tend to bring older editors, and they say, if you can do something differently from the way we do it, from the way we know it, if you can bring new skills, then there are always jobs. So that's what one of the senior editors we keep bringing in has said. if I can just go back to that issue of the current environment, what I've heard from my students is that they had a lot of difficulty getting hold of people to interview virtually. And they were frustrated because they were still working on their portfolio, and they were mainly not being, sources were not cooperative very much. In preparation for this meeting, I spoke to one of the officials of the Kenya Correspondent Association, and what he was telling me is that, well, there are no opportunities to speak to sources at meetings, at conferences, at events, which gives them the opportunity to speak to sources. So basically, sources who do not want to speak to you are very difficult to get hold of. And he uses the term that the fact that the sources are actually hiding. My final point is, on this particular, on some of the things that have already been said, is that I think the kind of experience our students have had now, particularly the kind of uncertainty that was going on around the time of where they don't know what's happening, we update them and things change the same day. That's a kind of environment that prepares them very effectively for the industry environment.
Yes, and I think I've heard the same thing from our students as well, that they feel much more prepared. Kelly, I will go to you in just a moment. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to actually pick up from where Fred left off. In ACJ, what we have done from what we're trying to do from this year is, we have just scrapped the streams. We don't have broadcast. We used to have broadcast journalism, print journalism, and radio journalism. From this semester, this term onwards, is just integrated journalism. So what we're just essentially doing is we are just trying to actually cope with the industry, the challenges we are going to face in the industry. Like Fred has been telling, the industry is looking for new skill set. So, for example, suddenly the COVID and this whole pandemic thing is suddenly made people aware of the importance of data journalism. Data journalism used to be a specialist area. Now everybody has to understand data. Okay, what is doing, and health journalism, health reporting. Suddenly, this has become a very just to look at how health reporters are doing. So suddenly, what we are doing, what we have decided in ACJ is we just integrated the whole program so that our students, after the 10 months training. Oh, by the way, ours is not an MA program; it's a very, very hectically packed 10 months program. It's a postgraduate diploma program. So once they are out of their industry ready, in the sense that they can go, those who want to go to broadcast, they will have the skill set. Those who want to do data skills, they will have the skill set. And those who want to do interactive multimedia, they will have their skill set. And podcasting is also a huge part of it. So that's what we integrated the whole program into one stream, which is integrated journalism. And I've been just talking about this for a long, long time, and I don't understand, because the way we all evolved, I came from print. Back in the 80s, we were in print, then we just evolved to another, because I was just crazy enough to get into mobile journalism way back in 1998, when we were actually breaking stories by text messages, SMS. And who thought, just somebody would be able to send an email on a phone? Nobody. People would have laughed at you. I'm talking about 1998. We were breaking stories in the form of SMS. Then suddenly, there was a quantum leap in technology so far as we were concerned. That was MMS. We were super thrilled with MMS. Now, you can actually add an image to your stories. So that's where we started. So this is the evolution, this evolving. So I'm not saying, I completely agree with this, and there are going to be more job opportunities actually. Because industry is looking for people, like somebody texted that, okay, so I'm saying I'm getting paid $100,000 pounds. So what if the industry, somebody can hire 10 people with that kind of money? 5 people with that kind of money and bring in more skill set. And industry, if I'm a publisher, I would definitely go for that. So actually, I see an opportunity in this challenge.
Okay, so many things. We could continue for probably another 4 hours, but I'm going to go to Kelly too. He has another point to make, and then we'll talk with Marion.
I'll be brief. First, Dev, you're having me flash back to my BlackBerry, so thank you for that. But we have a bit of a different model, so we didn't do integrated journalism. We still have sort of specialties, but in our journalism, we still have students who primarily emphasize print or multimedia photography, but we merge that together. And so our students in journalism, our students in broadcast are all heavily steeped in digital, because digital has cut across our curriculum. So our public relations students take advanced social media and analytics course. And what we find is we get students who graduate and work in local newspapers. I just had a few get hired in local newspapers. We have students, a number of students working in traditional television newsrooms. But we also have students with these digital media skills, multimedia storytelling skills, savvy with photography, working with cell phones on video, social media analytics, not just best practices, but analytics reports. We have students working at Google, Facebook, for Gannett's Corporation, so that they're doing work that serves a number of newspapers. So we very often find students take these skills and take multimedia storytelling skills and wind up in unusual situations. I have one student who was a former public relations major, works for a luxury hotel in Dallas. They came to a meeting one day and said, gosh, it'd be great if we could produce videos for our conference attendees coming in and welcoming them. I wish we could do that. And one of my students said, we can do that with our phones. She sort of became a television star in that hotel during conferences since then because of the skills she learned in our program.
Fantastic. Marion.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I don't know if all of you are journalism programs. Mine is not a journalism program. Mine is a media production program. So some of my students become journalists, but many others are into all other aspects of media production. And they have long lived in a world of short contracts, partial contracts. They're working on Big Brother Canada for 6 weeks, and then they're working on another show for 2 months, that kind of thing. But what you were just saying, Kelly, is a really positive thing that's happening to my students. The corporate world loves their skills. So I'm in charge of the fourth year, or Americans call them seniors, or we call them fourth years, and they do an internship. And one of my students, I'm reading her essay, and she's working for a garage door company. And I was like, what? Because they wanted to do branding. They wanted a social media presence. They wanted marketing. They wanted videos. So many of my students are getting jobs with their skills that they have, doing like so much social media and corporate videos, and their ability to shoot and edit and write these kind of videos is, and those are things they can make money at. It's precarious labor because it's temporary sometimes, but they're getting lots of work.
Yes, I agree. And the point that you're making about corporate jobs as a result of broadcast journalism or multimedia jobs is important, because it's where a lot of our students are going. Bruce. Oops.
Just to add a little bit to what Marion and Kelly were saying, I think the stereotype of the old journalist is diminishing and going away. And I think the ability to write and communicate are still the foundation that'll help you get a job. I've got some friends who manage some McDonald's restaurants, and was talking with them recently, and they said, they said, what do you teach at Baylor? I said, well, one of the things is writing, and they rolled their eyes. I said, why do you say that? And they said, well, if I get applications for employment, and if I get an application that has 2 sentences that are grammatically correct and linked together for one complete thought, I immediately put that application in a management trainee position. The art of writing is becoming a lost art, and communicating. And if you talk to news directors at TV stations, and Kelly, you may agree, hopefully would agree with this, they'll say the fastest ways to get a job and then move up are as a producer or someone who can write, and then also as somebody who can do something digitally. And that includes the videos that you're talking about and this help. 2 of our students who graduated last year got jobs as producers in Waco, and they both just recently, after 1 year, made market jumps with new jobs, more than 75 market sizes. Because they can produce and write. And so the jobs are there. You have to have those basic skills, but then if you can tweak it with some digital and video production and things like that, there's nothing wrong with a corporate job. I mean, some of them are freelance, but some of them, if you prove your worth, you'll get to stay full time.
So many opportunities if you can write and produce well. That's absolutely correct. I wanted to take a few more questions from people who are watching us right now. We have a question, and Jenny, this question is for you. It is from Uni Aditan, who asks, which are the tools that are used to verify the news? We're going to take a step back to where we were a little bit earlier in this panel, and I think you had mentioned verification. What are some of the tools that you
I noticed that I think Dev mentioned quite a few that we use. These are video verification tools. InVid is a good one to check out any difference in compression in videos.
Can you say that one again?
InVid.
Oh, InVid.
Yeah.
And ID.
Yeah, the photo forensic is another one. Obviously, simple reverse image searches on I tend to ask students to use different search engines. So we use obviously Google, we use Baidu, which is a Chinese search engine, and Yandex, which is the Russian search engine. So there is no single tool as such. I like teaching that because it's kind of like a puzzle. You kind of have to think, if this tool doesn't work, then maybe it's faked in a different way. There is no magical tool that will solve anything. And by the way, the main problem with tools is that they get outdated really quickly. Tools that worked 6 months ago no longer work now.
And I think this is where news literacy comes in also, which we've discovered very few of our students have those skills, news literacy skills, where they can go and find the source themselves without relying on a tool. They can actually figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
We have a question, I think, from somebody, also from no, not from ACJ, I can't tell. But the question is, this is also from Lee. Nowadays, mobile is a powerful studio to share the news content. So is there any platform for mobile journalism to take part? And Fred, this question is for you. Is there any platform for mobile journalism to take part, share the news content at your college, Coventry University?
Yes, there is. There is quite a number of the methods that we currently. One of the techniques that we currently teach is mobile journalism, and there are to do it effectively. There are certain additional kit that you might need, and as part of the kit that the university provides, for instance, apart from the laptop and Adobe Creative Clouds. One of the things that in the area of journalism we normally give the students are accessories that make it easier, for instance, to capture audio while using mobile journalism, and also introduce to students specific software that can be used for editing. And I think Dev already covered quite a number of these when he was speaking. So we actually within Coventry University in the Media Lawn Shop studio, we've got a mobile broadcast kit that you can have a broadcast radio, particularly audio broadcast studio. You can pitch it anywhere and use it using mobile devices. So that's a key aspect of what we currently offer.
Excellent. I want to make sure I didn't miss somebody here, but Dave just let us know that the latest edition of Verification Tools is out. Can you talk about that a little bit, Dave? You'll have to unmute.
I just checked the link. It's edited by you. You must be familiar with it. They've been verification tools. Great Silverman's been editing this for the last 3-4 years. And the latest edition of verification tools, that book is out. Last week it's free to download, and I just sent the link in the group.
And it's called Data Journalism.
They talk about a lot of
data journalism.
Yeah, the link you can.
Yeah, so I think that
they shared it. I will just. Can you make it popular?
I'm going to put it. I'll put it up on the YouTube channel too. But it's datajournalism.com /read/handbook/verification-3. So yeah, that's going to be a great. I don't know anything about it. What does it do?
Done. It's done for everyone.
Yeah. Great.
Excellent. So data. Yes. Yeah, verification has been actually, you can't say one tool, you can do pretty much everything with one tool. That doesn't work like that. You remember, just there was a time when when I was working in the Middle East, one of my job was for a platform. One of my job was to bust, because those were the days when Osama bin Laden was just putting up a lot of videos, or rather audio tapes. And one of my job was to verify the sound, and in order to do that, I had to learn Arabic. And he sounds, and there was no technology, and we are talking about the mid 90s. And there was no technology, and I've been fooled several times by this, people who were faking Osama bin Laden's voice. And they were putting up, in the 90s, there were a lot of audio tapes and threatening to blow up everything. And now, look at it, it's a combination of image.
Dave froze. Okay, I'm going to go over to Jenny, who also mentioned photo forensic. We lost Deb for a second.
Yeah, so photo forensic is basically, you could put in a JPEG or a PNG or just a URL, a video URL. So what it's looking for is primarily is photographs, because if a photo has been doctored, the compression rate of the images would be different. So suppose I put a flower on top of a field, and the flower is in pose, the compression rate is different. So it's basically a tool that analyzes images that way. InVid is a little bit like, I don't know if you're familiar with Snopes, which is a site that aggregates. So InVid does that, and also it has a bunch of digital tools as well. Again, looking at the video frame by frame. Are there cuts? Are there images that comes into the video that looks like it's added? I find, they're both useful, but then again, there is no foolproof tool.
Right. I'm looking to see, I think that Kelly just mentioned, which I'm not familiar with also, Google's Flourish Studio.
It's a tool to produce data interactive, so we teach that a lot. We'll have students do infographics. Data is now a required part of our multimedia journalism in addition to audio, photos, video, the traditional. And Flourish, you build your own Excel spreadsheet, upload it into this free online tool, and it magically creates interactive line graphs, pie graphs, maps. It's a very nice tool, and it's free.
Good.
And I put a link in the chat.
And also, Deb has Flourish Studio.
And one of the unique features of Flourish Studio simply uses the bar chart, the animation. You can animate the bar chart race, and there is a VR. Now they've just added a VR visualization, so which can be very handy in AR and VR. You can actually create visualizations, and with the headset, you can make them interactive.
And this is also
Flourish is super good and is owned by Google, I know this.
Okay, and also
it's free, yes.
And
Flourish Studio.
And it's free. That's always great.
Guardian uses it a lot. It is free. It is free. It is free. And it's very good to create animated visualization for social media, for Twitter, just charts and bars running around, and it's pretty cool. Yeah.
I think one of the other things that we need to talk about, in addition to just the whole idea of the opportunities that we have being able to teach our students how to create community journalism and get their message out there, we also get into the whole idea of censorship and inciting online. In other words, if we don't allow people to have certain speech, are we censoring them? If we do allow them to have that speech, are they inciting violence? Which is something that we have seen over the past couple of months and years with those people that do have access to be able to say anything, whether it's on 4chan or 8chan, or whether it is on a cable program where there are no restrictions or limitations. Does anybody want to take that one? I think, Dan, you and I had discussed that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. As you know, we had some protests here in Hong Kong in between June last year and December primarily, and these are it has a lot of support from college age people, students. Many of them are students, and so it was very difficult for some of them to see the bias and their own opinions in doing these interviews, right? They would do interviews and they didn't really want to see the other side of the political spectrum. I find that that's a problem with many students where I am. I mean, do you find that? I think it's just the fact that their age group, when you're 19, you're just so engrossed in this social media that you just in that echo chamber, you just can't see beyond it.
That other term, which is the filter bubble, they're looking for the things they're interested in, and they're looking in the places that they're used to looking in, and they're not looking anywhere else. So one of the biggest problems I have with my students is getting them to find more than one source for something. And they will go, and the first person they talk to, done. And then I say to them, well, are there any other points of view? And what other perspectives can you find? So they're, again, mine are not journalism students, but they're not very good at digging. And they're not very good at doing those basics of journalism that we may all have been used to doing in our own professional practices, which is if one person that you phone up says to you, yes, the sky is falling, you don't go to air with it. So it's a continuing struggle with me to get them to, as you talked about, verification, faith, but also just digging and going deeper than the surface of Google and finding other places to go searching. And as someone else mentioned earlier, their terror of using the phone, their inability to pick up the phone and make a cold call. I had a student say to me, well, what if someone answered? I'm going to phone at 10 o'clock at night when I know she's not there. So I had to talk them through how to make a phone call. So with all of their amazing technical skills, there are some things that are also being lost in their ability to communicate clearly and effectively and go out and find a variety of answers to the question.
And we laugh about that, Marian, but it is a problem. I think it was more of a problem when we were doing our traditional newscasts. Now that they're online, they feel more comfortable doing a Zoom interview with someone than they did doing an in-person interview. And Bruce, you had something to say.
I did. One of the things, and we came across this just last week when one of our students was interviewing an activist group and got the CEO of the activist group. And I tell my students, is one of the things you have to go into every story and ask yourself, okay, what's their agenda? And a lot of times both sides have an agenda, and you have to recognize that that's a possibility and then figure out whether that's the case or not. Sometimes they aren't, but if you're talking to an attorney, he's got an agenda to help as a client. If you're talking to someone with a political group, they've got an agenda that they want to push, and you have to recognize those. And that's one of the questions we make them ask going into those interviews.
So, did anybody else want to touch on that subject? I have a big question to ask of everyone.
I just wanted to add a little bit about one of the issues that students particularly struggle with is consent, particularly for broadcast work. And one of the most difficult situations we find ourselves in, particularly in the area of activism, is the younger, new younger activists who express themselves, and some of them are just turning 18 or even under 18. I don't know what the experiences of others are, but it is important that students think through, particularly the explicit, informed consent that students that they get from their sources or subjects, particularly if it's on a sensitive matter. And our university has become relatively strict on that particular issue. For us as journalists, we find it a bit onerous, but it's one of the things that we students feel that is a burden and they probably shouldn't have to do, but we still get them to think about it.
Well, the question that I wanted to ask was one of the, let's see if I can focus on this. One of the issues that we decided we were going to talk about when we all came together and said, hey, we want to talk about what we've experienced and what our students have experienced, but also, where do we think news and media are headed after things get back to semi-normal? We now see the network news and even local news broadcasting from their homes, not using the studio, doing different disruptive kinds of journalism that was not even thought possible before COVID-19 happened. So I wanted to kind of toss it out to everybody and see who would like to address that. Where do you see us going? And who wants to start? Okay, April.
I'll go. Yeah. Ooh, I just sighed heavily. I think personally, just from trying to educate myself in order to educate the students, and as a practitioner, that I think it will be a combination. If you look at, shows like even American Idol over there in America, they're sending packages to contestant or competitors' homes, and they're doing their own lighting, and it makes them feel more a part of the show. And they're already a little bit media savvy anyway. At the same token, I think that, it'll be a combination. We can't replace the traditional studio. And like I mentioned when we all spoke the other day, those impromptu meetings, that human touch, that human connection, the best ideas are born out of us feeding off of each other, and not in this way. It's slightly uncomfortable. Maybe for the students in the younger generation, they're more comfortable, but they're not fully running the show yet. So I think it will be a combination of using the beautiful lights and the studios and everything that we had, and taking the opportunity, if somebody can't come to studio, or cost savings, saving money on budgets. But you can't replace a beautiful shiny studio with Simon Cowell, for example.
I know that Dev would argue with you on that one, but I'm going to go to Sally first and ask her to talk about court reporting and how that has changed, and it has significantly in the U.S.
Yes, I just wanted to think about going forward how our public institutions are going to be covered, because council meetings, court cases are all taking place sort of behind closed doors now. Now some of them are digitally available, and that's meant there's been a massive move to go to film court cases, which has been very controversial in the UK, and we haven't done very much of it. Now suddenly things are online and digital courts are available. That means in some ways that journalists have more access to these proceedings potentially, and considering our research shows that there was very little court reporting beforehand, and now this might mean that we'll have more court reporting if you can join proceedings digitally. But it also might mean that we have less access, because if we can't be, that's not available, then justice is being done behind closed doors. And it's a very live subject in the UK at the moment about this idea of open justice, and how I think that we are going to see a lot more digital courts even after the pandemic, but we need to kind of really monitor how that affects journalists' access to things like courts and council meetings and local government meetings, those kind of things. So that's what I say. I think that needs we need to keep a close eye on that when we come out of the pandemic and the lockdown.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that our government officials and courts have become very comfortable with physical distancing now, and the fact that they are not being seen or questioned. Kelly, what are your thoughts about that? Oh, and there we go. You got Zoom bombed by a child.
Very quick thought. Now I need to look for my dog to have her come into the shot. Quick thought on courts. We made history this week because of the pandemic. The Supreme Court, for the first time ever, allowed an audio transmission of question and answer. And in fact, Clarence Thomas, Associate Justice, has been known for years for never asking a question at these. And yet, because of the way the Chief Justice organized it, he actually asked several questions for the first time in years. A couple of very tumultuous changes in our courts. I think a lot of reporters are going to continue to have the flexibility now to report from home. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, photojournalists at newspapers used to have to go to work, get their assignments, pick up equipment, go out. That stopped many years ago. They would just get assignments the evening before, go directly to assignments and shoot. That happens now with the videographers. I think increasingly we'll see that with reporters, that they'll have assignments, they'll go report, they'll edit, they'll submit. They may not go to the studio for days at a time. I think it'll be an interesting change.
And I think, let me see, Kelly, that was Kelly. Deb, I know, where did he go? Because he has talked a lot about the fact that the newsroom is not necessary any longer. And it looks like I'm looking at my participant list. Oh, he's here, he's just off for a moment. But that is true. It shows us that it's not necessary really to be in a newsroom. However, there was a news anchor last week who said to me when I asked about some of the stations having their anchors anchoring from home and their reporters only in their homes but not in the studio. And the news anchor who was anchoring from the studio said, I think it looks terrible, very unprofessional. Are we being asked to lower our standards, or is this a necessary part of getting the word out? And Bruce, you have your hand up.
I think I'm hoping that it's not going to be the norm, because I think that environment in the newsroom is so valuable for students starting out their career. And I used to not recommend students, if they were offered a bureau job, for a newsroom, to not accept that, because oftentimes you're out on an island and you don't get to bounce things off as your news director is often, or other people. And I think that the camaraderie in a newsroom, the learning opportunities is so much greater. So, I know cost is a factor in everything, that they'll look at that, but I hope the newsroom environment doesn't go away, because that's a huge part of the learning for young reporters and young producers and people getting into the business.
Absolutely. Marion, what are your thoughts?
One of the things I don't like about the studio and news is the glamorization of it. And when on CNN, Brooke Baldwin was home with COVID, well, my goodness, there she is without her makeup at home, looking like a real human being. And what I get really tired of in certainly Canadian and American TV newsrooms is the all gussied up, full of makeup, all the female anchors looking like they're dressed to go out to party. And what I liked about people being at home is they looked like real human beings and not like they were trying to be movie stars. So, I've, and on all the late night talk shows and everything, I've been so happy to see real human beings and not them looking like they're spackled with 10 feet of makeup. So it's one of the things I don't miss about the studios going away at all.
I have to agree with you. Maybe the pendulum is going to swing the other way. I'm not sure, but April, you noticed something different in the Netherlands.
Yeah, no, just to make a point that we're an international panel, so it's really interesting the approach to news, and especially what I observe has happened in America in the past 4 years from afar, is that there's a completely different approach to how news is delivered. Here, I don't see it at all or experience it as a form of entertainment and the gussied up anchors and the showgirls or whatever. It's just very pragmatic. This is the news, we're delivering it. They're wearing jeans with a blazer, they're telling you what happened. The cameras are robotics generally, and we don't have that big in your face networks competing and screaming and four people talking over each other. It's just trashy, in my opinion. It just seems to be very civilized in delivering the news. So probably for this conversation, I don't know how it is in Hong Kong, or in Chennai, but or the UK even. I think it's a little more like here in the Netherlands. I don't miss that aspect of newsertainment, if there's a term that exists. I don't know.
Infotainment.
Definitely the monetizing of it, and getting people to tune in, and I think sex sells, and that's where they seem to be coming from. Marion, did you? Oh, sorry. I didn't see that.
Yes,
Deb.
Yeah, just a quick thing. When we are talking about news, just I have a problem with a lot of you getting fixated with flat screen television. Okay, when we're talking about visual stories, we are talking about stories produced for the mobile phones and for the web as well, for the apps. So when you're talking about the flat screen, okay, and there is a difference between the user experience with that. When a flat screen, it's a lean back experience, which is passive. Whereas with the phone in your hand, it is a lean forward experience, which is very active. So when you create content for your phone, you'll have to be a little more informal, you'll have to be a little more chatty. It's a one-on-one conversation. It's not you're talking to 10 people, mass communication. There's the one person talking to another person because you are consuming content on the phone, you're in the loo, you're in the bed, you're at the Starbucks, you're waiting for a bus, you're a Jew, you're watching. So you have to communicate like one person talking to another person. So there's a problem when you're talking about, you'll have to define what exactly visual storytelling. Is it for the flat screen or is it for a phone, smartphone? So for me, mobile journalism is creating content for the mobile consumption. As well as now BBC is doing quite well with for their creating for broadcast as well. So that's where this comes in. People are too good to be believable on the studio. So for example, see what Vice News is doing. If you can take you back a couple of years ago when they covered that Charlottesville, that thing in Charlottesville, I forgot.
On Vice
so
News.
Vice News, and Vice News is not broadcast television, but it's visual platform. So what are we talking about here? What audience are we talking about here? So we need to actually define that before we talk about all this thing. That's my point. Hello, wait.
Jenny, I think that April had asked what type of April, you were basically talking about how the United States seems to stand out with the type of news that is projected on television. And she mentioned she didn't know how Hong Kong or other countries experience this with their news anchors or their hosts. What do you see in Hong Kong?
There is a level of glamorization. We do see people who are news anchor later becoming what they call key opinion leaders here, meaning the YouTube stars. They start off in television to make their names, and then they move on to do other things. There is that. But I personally don't think that's sustainable, not just in Hong Kong, but anywhere in the world, because these television stations, they're just not getting the commercials that they used to. And well, I mean, I think that's a problem for news outlets in general. Is one newspaper here in Hong Kong, the South China Morning Post, they've had an amazing number of views over the past few months, in fact, over the past year, but they can't change it, they can't monetize that. And that's a problem. It's high quality journalism, but people are just not willing to pay for it. To the point about the anchors, it's the same thing. Are people actually going to pay these TV stations for the advertising to watch that? I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Do you think they will? Do you think it's sustainable?
It hasn't worked yet. The ratings continue to go down, except for in the middle of COVID-19, we are seeing much more consumption of traditional broadcast news. Marion, I have one more point to make, and we have about 15 minutes left. What I would like to do after Marion speaks is to go around for final thoughts about what we have experienced, what you are thinking will be happening next, whatever. I'm just going to open it up to everyone. So Jenny,
did you want me to make my point and then
and then if you want to wrap it up with
my point, I'll make my final point and then I'll shut up. My one point was Canada's news is somewhere between what April's talking about in the Netherlands and the United States. I just want to say 4 of our national anchors are female, and be over 50. So it's one of the things I like about turning on the TV news in Canada is that there are, it's not all people who look like Barbie. And my final point I was going to make before we do the roundtable, going back to Global News Relay and my own project, Global Campus Studio. One of the things we are doing right now is something I want more of from our students when we do our projects. My project is all about international online collaboration. And often, with Global News Relay, our students work by themselves. And the only ones in Global News Relay, Jenny's 2 students are the only ones that got to meet the other students. In my Global Campus Studio, the shows are done collaboratively, but again, the only students who get to meet other students are the ones who are the hosts and sometimes the writers. So I would like to put out the challenge that when I do my next international collaborative shows, I want our students to be talking to each other more, collaborating with each other more, learning from each other more. It's hard because our semesters are different, our time zones are different, our curricular needs and requirements are different. But I really feel like there's a lot to be gained by having people from everywhere discussing their similarities and differences, and I want that for our students going forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Marion. Fred, you had a comment about glamorization and then your final thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes when students join a journalism course, the problem is sometimes they view journalism as the glamorized TV presenter. And that is all they think they want to do, and that's all they want to be taught, and they want to spend time doing that. And journalism is not about that alone. Other things, for instance, writing and some of the things we've already talked about needs to be taken into account. My final point is more to revisit the issue of fact-checking and verification, and linking it back to the skills that are required of modern or current journalists. I think this is one thing that we all need to include in most of our curricula. In Coventry University, we tend to get external, organizations to come and co-deliver some of these sessions. Specifically, we've been getting in, people from Google News Initiative, as well as Center for Investigative Journalism. So that's one area, because there's a lot of so-called fake news flying around. And it doesn't need to be too technical. Sometimes it's very basic checks of logos, certain things within a piece of text for you to identify maybe it is not legit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fred. Fred from Coventry University. Kelly from Texas State.
I think we'll see an increase in mobile. We'll see an increase in portable tools. So Adobe Creative Cloud, tools like we see from Google. And Google has a robust suite of tools to support reporting. I think all of those things are going to make it less and less necessary for people to be in a newsroom. I think they're going to expand opportunities to work remotely, mobilely. And so I think we're going to see growth in that. I understand the expense, the look, the interaction of being in a studio, being in a newsroom. And of course, I've spent many years in that situation. But that's what I think the future bears, is we're going to see a big increase in mobile and social media reporting. And I also think we're going to see on the edge of pro-am, amateur, professional, bloggers, people create their own brands on social media, and they're going to be around the edges of news reporting, even as what we think of as legacy media maybe contracts a little bit.
Okay, excellent. And then April from Breda in the Netherlands.
Just my final thought would be, now that we've had this panel, I just had this idea that occurred to me that it would be so interesting to have some kind of platform for international faculty that come together on something like, if you all are familiar with the new app that just launched called Quibi, where there's a couple $2 billion worth of funds pumped in by some former Disney execs to create short form content, entertainment, not news, for millennials. But it would be so fun to have some kind of platform for international teachers to give short knowledge clips where if you're a media student somewhere around the world, I want to know, there's Kelly, he's got a 10-minute quick bite of, some expertise on mobile producing, or we want to talk about court reporting, we can go to this quick bite. And it could, in the end, be this sort of database that we're all kind of constantly updating, and it could be an app. I don't know. I don't know how we would monetize that. But anyway, that was just kind of my final thought. And in terms of the collaborating on news programs like Global News Relay and Marion's project and all the other ones popping up, I agree wholeheartedly about collaboration and some ideas we can discuss maybe offline, but it can be just, maybe it's students pitching to other lecturers and having everybody, attend that. Now that we know that this works, why couldn't I've had Marion pop into my classes a number of times and many other things, but I would love to have any number of you come in live, and then the students could also meet in this way, despite time zones, because we're all used to it now. And then we have a truly international newsroom.
I really love that offer. I think that we should all make ourselves available to one another to be able to do just that, to have guest speakers in, or also to help find guest speakers from our various cities. Andrew, final thoughts?
Yeah, mine really tallies with what April just said. I'm a big believer in that. I think what we've done as a profession has been rather caught cold by the quick advance of the media. So you're overfaced with the stuff that comes onto social media. And in our profession, we see straight through it and go, well, that's obviously ridiculous. But Joe Public can't in the main, and that's what we've seen with Cambridge Analytica, that's what we've seen with international interference in domestic elections, and so on. So I'm all for anything that allows this kind of collaboration. I definitely take part in it, because the journalism has now become international. The falsehoods have become international, and I think we have to be international in response to that. So who's better placed than a mixture of actual journalists and academics to counter that? So yeah, I'm up for that. I think it's a great idea, and I think maybe if this is a starting place for it, that's an excellent legacy.
Excellent. And Sally?
I'd echo that. I'd be very interested in more of these kind of international collaborations. Just from my point of view, I think reflecting on COVID-19, it's been extraordinary how innovative and creative and problem solving it has been, that students have done lots of things that I never thought they would, and so have staff. I've learned a lot. And I suppose the one thing I think about going forward from a teaching point of view, that I think we really need to think about how to kind of level the playing field for those students who have not got the resources that we assume they have. And I think, we've talked about that earlier, but I think that we need to keep that in mind when we go back to a sort of normal. It'll be easy for that sort of poverty to be covered up again, and I think we should keep that in mind. Anyway, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, Sally, thank you so much. And when I was having technical difficulties in the very beginning, I did not get to run your video. So I do want to do that right now. And you can tell us a little bit about it. It's very short. So hold on 1 second and let me get that up on the screen. And I hope, I remembered that I have to, because is the sound important, or should I run it without the sound?
No, it's just music, because this was a piece made by all our students had to do a kind of 1 minute social video on life in lockdown.
Okay.
And this was one done by one of our third years.
Here it goes.
Using KineMaster. But it's a funny piece that we made, but as I say, the BBC showed it because they knew what students were doing in their lives.
Well done. Yeah, I love.
It's not the most serious journalism, but it was a kind of sweet little piece of how people are managing.
Right. Well, and since we're on the topic, and I also did not get to show Kelly's from Texas State when we talk about, and this is also because it's media production and it shows a lot of different angles and a lot of different shots. So I'm going to run yours as well, Kelly, if you don't mind, and if you want to talk about that too.
This is an assignment that my students have to do to avoid jump cuts. So the assignment is to get from here to there in as creative or silly a way as possible. I always do an example video. This is one of my sample videos.
All right, jump cuts, the dreaded jump cuts. Here we go. Awesome. So tell us about that.
So my students always do this. I do examples because it's just easier for them to sort of grasp if they can see it rather than me talking about it. And I have a number of examples, mine and students. It's an exercise that happens very early in the semester. It's entirely shot, edited, and published from the phone. And then when they go out and do more traditional stories, rule of thirds framing with interviews, B-roll of stories they're covering, this sort of sets the stage for how to go about shooting that in such a way as to avoid jump cuts. Ironically, this semester it was really valuable that we did that assignment early because the students ended up finishing the semester working with their phones. But the way, one other future thing that I didn't mention that I should is I think emerging media, drones, 360 cameras, we have those. We have small ones that are FAA exempt that we operate with phone apps, wearables. I think all of those things are going to robustly emerge in the next few years also.
Okay, great. We want to hear more about that too, if you can put that information up. And Dan.
I'll keep mine short and sweet. The idea or the big thing that I've taken away from this is really truly how creative our students are. That if you give them the opportunity and give them the chance to have a little bit of freedom, and I am a control freak, right? I'm from television, so I'm used to time and you will meet this time and all that, right? But letting them go was hard for me. But seeing what they've done has really quite impressed me with their creativity and their ability to think on the fly. All those things that we've run into, the making of the phone call and all that, I found that some of them, this has forced them to do that because they're on their own a little bit in that moment. So, I think that it's shown how creative they are. And one of the projects that we did in visual storytelling was that they had to do a video diary, show us what's happening with your life. And it was really fascinating to hear what's going on in their life, these little stories that, normally we're not going to know about in an environment, in a classroom, because a lot of them don't tell us this stuff. But it allowed them to really show that. So that was a lot of fun and very interesting too. So that's my takeaway from this whole thing. And, thank you all, everybody, for letting us be a part of it at Texas State. And hopefully next year we'll have some more stories for you as opposed to this year.
That's all right. Your students are awesome, and the stories they've done in the past have been fantastic. Bruce. Oops, let me unmute you.
There we go. I told students, I'll make this real quick. This is, for many of them, this is the biggest story that they will ever cover, this COVID-19. And so it's given them a chance to think out of the box. It was an opportunity for them to be creative and write some new ways to do things, and because this is uncharted territory for just about everybody. And so I think it was an opportunity for them. And I agree with what Dan said. It's been interesting seeing their creativity. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest takeaways from this moving forward. And I appreciate the panel and a chance to participate in this. A lot of good stuff.
Thank you. I agree very much. Let me see. Deb.
Yeah, quick thing, just the takeaway from me, for as far as I'm concerned, is I think it's time you and I, we together, we disrupted the classroom first. And we have to dismantle this, and by dismantling that, we get actually instill these ideas to the students we are teaching, and they go and they have to dismantle the newsrooms. One of the reasons I got into teaching it, because I've been a journalist for 27 years, but I just went around the world trying to change the world at that stage. So I thought of getting into teaching so that you get to actually screw 60 students by and unleash these 60 students to the world, and they go and disrupt it. So this time we dismantle the news, and by doing so, dismantling the classroom first, then by doing so, dismantling the newsroom. Because this is an opportunity for us to change, to transform journalism, to take journalism to the next level. Something which is very different and exciting for the young people. And if we don't disrupt ourselves, if we don't do this, somebody else is going to do it for us. So we just don't want that to happen. And I would also like to, before we wrap up, I just would like to invite all of you to school for our next pop-up newsroom. So the truly international, actually, it's a live reporting thing. So, well, I have the emails now. We'll invite all of you to this, to along with your students.
That would be fantastic. We've been part of
for this opportunity, Faith, and Dan.
We've been part of the pop-up newsroom for many years now with Deb, and it's a great experience for our students, and I encourage you all to be involved in that as well. Jenny.
I think this kind of collaboration is invaluable, not only just for faculty, but also for our students, because for the students, this is the world that they will face. Is when they start their career, it's not just in Hong Kong, in whatever city, whatever town, it's the world they have to work with. But as far as journalism is concerned, I don't think just being online can ever replace that trust that you need as a journalist to get people to tell you the story. So I think that, yeah, online it's valuable, but the face-to-face stuff is what will keep journalism alive.
I have to agree. Did I miss anybody? Did everybody get final thoughts in? I want to say thank you to all of you. As you can see, we all have a lot in common no matter where we are. This is 6 countries, 11 universities, and most of us have been together since 2014, I think, when I came into the Global News Relay. It was started at Salford University in 2013 and with Sarah Jones, right, Andrew? And it's been such a benefit, I think, to our students at Fresno State, and to me, it's been a benefit for me as a professor, because I have been able to meet all of you, and I feel as though, even though I've never met you in person, except for Marion, that you are all my friends that go way beyond colleagues, and I just appreciate all of the hard work and the dedication you have toward journalism, toward your students, and I realize not all of you are journalism professors, but we're all storytellers, and that's all part of it. I know someone said that a little bit earlier. So this is our common thread, why we got together, but also teaching and education, and that we all care for our students as well. The reason we are together is because of the Global News Relay. I do want to say thank you all so much. This has been a real pleasure. I think it's been enlightening. I hope that we continue to learn from our students, and that our students continue to do the best news and get the best information out, because we need their help as much as possible. Journalism is so important. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Everybody.